Hey guys, Danny Schaefer back with another video. It's February 24th, 2021, and I just finished our 4-video series detailing our backpacking trip to Spade Lake in Washington's Alpine Lakes Wilderness from last summer. While making these films, I had a lot of time to think about the trip and reflect on it. And so I compiled a list of tips, facts, and really everything you'll need to know for the trip that I thought I'd share in the hopes of really aiding in making your trip a successful one, and who knows, maybe it'll just make it easier to plan. I just finished a similar video for the Enchantments about a month ago, and so far it's received really positive reviews, and so I thought I'd make this one. If you guys are new to this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button below if you enjoyed this video. I really appreciate all the support from everyone these last couple of months who have been watching the films. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so first off, what and where is Spade Lake? Spade Lake is a secluded mountain lake found tucked away deep within the Cascade Mountains of Washington State in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. To get there, one must travel to the closest small town of Ronald, Washington, and then travel northwest along Cle Elum Lake on Salmon-Les-Sac Road for 15 miles to reach the Salmon-Les-Sac trailhead. Getting to the trailhead was easy, and really any type of vehicle could get there since it was paved the majority of the way to the trailhead. To park here, one must obtain a Northwest Forest Pass, and you need to have it displayed in the windshield of your vehicle by hanging it on your rearview mirror. You can obtain an annual pass at fs.usda.gov for $30. From the Salmon-Les-Sac trailhead, Spade Lake is approximately 16 miles away, and it's not an easy feat. There's a couple of different ways to get there, but for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about the most common and efficient route, and this is the route that we took. First, one must travel to Waptis Lake to get there. This is the lower lake, and it's very common for people to set up camp here the first night, and then make their way up to Spade Lake the next day. From the Salmon-Les-Sac trailhead, follow the Waptis River Trail 1310 to get there for about 10 miles and ascend really only 1,150 vertical feet. When you take off from the trailhead, it's really important right out of the gate to know your trail. And the biggest tip here that I can give is to stay right. When we left the trailhead, we missed the right turn for the Waptis River Trail and actually hiked a quarter of a mile up the Polali Ridge Trail 1310. We had to backtrack a little, but luckily we recognized our mistake fast and got back to the Waptis River Trail relatively quick. So we completely went the wrong way. We're about 5 minutes into our hike, and we went left at this little orange rock, and instead we should have gone to the right. So probably just wasted a solid 10 or 15 minutes, but at least we caught it pretty quick. So if anyone's watching this video, go right to get to Waptis Lake on the trail, not left. Go right. Does it say it right there? Gotcha. There it is. Being on the right track, and from here, all you've got to do is hike. This trail to Waptis Lake has a lot of ups and downs, and the best way that I can describe it is like rolling hills. Personally, I'd rate it as moderate, and there's plenty of streams to fill up water on your way through this one. About a mile or so away from Waptis Lake, you'll cross the Waptis River. Depending on the time of year, it can be thigh to waist deep, so have your trekking poles ready and be prepared to get soaked. I was pretty thankful I brought my Chaco hiking sandals along, as the traction made for a really grippy surface to help cross the river. I'll put a link in the description for anyone interested in checking these out. They're highly recommended. So the water was pretty cold when we crossed, but honestly, it felt really good on my knees and ankles after 9 miles of hiking. The rest of the trail was completely flat after the river crossing for your last short jaunt to Waptis Lake. There were a ton of campsites here. Once you hit Waptis Lake, hang a left and you'll see 3 or 4 campsites not too far away from each other. I specifically remember there being a pit toilet close to these ones with signs to lead you to it if you need it. If you were to continue along the northern side of Waptis Lake towards the Spade Lake Junction, there are a couple of very nice campsites with fire pits here. Waptis Lake sits at about 3,000 feet elevation here, and so campfires are permitted. The way we planned out our trip was that we would have 4 days total to kill, so our plan that night when we got to Waptis Lake was to set up our camp and then pack up the next morning to backpack up to Spade Lake. If you're shorter on time, it's very common, as mentioned earlier, to day hike from Waptis Lake to Spade Lake and then a hike back down before dark. So basically, that night we settled in and prepared for our next day climb to Spade Lake. Okay, so now that we've tackled Waptis Lake, let's climb up to Spade Lake. So when you came into Waptis Lake, you were on the Waptis River Trail 1310, and you'll want to hop back on that same trail to get to Spade and hike along the northeastern edge of Waptis Lake until the trail intersects with Spade Lake Trail number 1337. At this point, you're going to want to make a mental note of how good your legs currently feel, because I guarantee they aren't going to feel the same when you're done with this one. So now, start climbing. You'll hike up a couple hundred feet, and here you'll actually intersect the Pacific Crest Trail. Pretty awesome. Keep climbing. The trail is steep and straight up for the first 1.5 miles or so. It's very forested in with massive trees all around, and I remember there being a lot of tree roots to climb on. Make sure that your water bottle was topped off when you left Waptis Lake. There are 3 or 4 places to fill a bottle up on your climb to Spade Lake, but the first one wasn't until about halfway up. You'll eventually gain enough elevation to pop out into an opening with amazing views of the surrounding mountains in Waptis Lake. On a clear day, Mount Rainier was easily visible to the southwest. The trail will side hill at this point, and before you know it, you'll be walking through open meadows and you'll get your first glimpse at the glimmering lake. There were a lot of higher campsites above the lake with stream water access that we noticed individuals were camping at. We decided, however, to head for the shores on the southern end of the lake, and I'm glad we did. There were 2 peninsulas, if you will, with campsites on them with amazing views. The first campsite on the eastern peninsula only had room for 1 tent, which forced us to the other one to the west. It didn't have the best sites, but we made it work, and we're extremely happy with the site we found. These 2 spots provided, in my opinion, the best views of the lake, with Mount Daniel towering high above with a prominence of roughly 2,700 feet above the lake. We even had a sandy beach where we put our backpacking chairs in the water and just relaxed. From Waptis to Spade Lake, I logged 6.4 miles hiked in just under 5 hours with 4,261 feet of vertical elevation gained. It took us a while to find our campsite, and with 45-pound packs, we were slow, but that just made us enjoy it more, right? I would say the climb to Spade Lake is comparable to Asgard Pass in the Enchantments in regards to overall difficulty. This climb wasn't as steep, but it was longer and still took some grind and mental toughness to get there. I guarantee that with a lighter pack, you'll make much better time than we did. Once we were here, we set up camp and settled in for the night. Spade Lake sits above 5,000 feet in elevation here, and so campfires are prohibited. It was really windy the night that we stayed at Spade Lake as well, so be prepared for the possibility of that. So my number one highlight of the trip when we went was making the trek up to Venus Lake. We left early in the morning the next day and caught the trail for Venus along the east side of Spade Lake. It was a relatively easy climb and took us 1 hour on the dot to get there. Once you reach the north end of Spade Lake, that's when your main ascent to Venus begins. A lot of the hike up is on smooth granite rock and provides for an easy walking surface where you can just put your head down and hike up. There are a couple steep sections here, and route finding can be a little bit challenging, but just follow the rock stacks and cairns and you'll find it. As long as you hike up, you will get to Venus Lake. The views were second to none. You're even closer to Mount Daniel at this point, and the morning sun made it even better. My recommendation is that if you have more time, and if it's even possible, you should backpack to Venus Lake and camp there. You'll most likely be completely alone, and the views will be worth it. There was snow on the ground still when we were there in mid-July, but it looked like there were a few flat spots where camp could be set up. In total, our hike to Venus Lake took 1 hour to get to the top in 1.4 miles and about 614 feet in vertical elevation gain. Unfortunately, when we returned to Spade Lake from Venus Lake, it was time for us to pack up camp. We didn't have to be back to the truck for 2 more mornings, but the thought of hiking out 16 miles sounded awful. So our plan was to break up the hike out to make it easier on ourselves. Our original goal was to head back down to Waptis Lake and set up camp again there, but ultimately we decided that the more we hiked that day, the less we would have to hike out the next day back to the truck. We descended from Spade Lake, hopped back on the Waptis River Trail, crossed the river again, and searched for a spot we remembered passing on the way up. This is the river camp, and it made for a perfect spot to end our last full day of this backpacking trip. Our river camp was 2.5 miles from Waptis Lake. We all took a swim here and freshened up, and it felt awesome. We settled in for the night and hiked out the next day. To get back to the trailhead, we only had to hike 6.82 miles. Okay, so that wraps up our trip and really kind of how we tackled it. With that, I'd like to share some quick tips and information that I came up with that you may appreciate. Number one, Spade Lake is gaining popularity. When researching Spade Lake, I saw multiple times that it is described as one of the most remote lakes in Washington State. I think the words most remote lake has a particular draw to it, and I can tell you firsthand that it's gaining popularity, and it's gaining it fast. Our trip took place midweek, but we hiked out on a Saturday morning. We passed approximately 50 hikers going towards Waptis and Spade Lake that morning. My best tip would be to go midweek, and if you're looking for complete seclusion, there's a good chance you won't find it here, especially on a weekend. Next tip, bring bug spray. The mosquitoes were absolutely terrible on the hike in and out of Waptis Lake. The trail follows the Waptis River, and as previously mentioned, it's heavily forested the whole hike in. This made for perfect breeding grounds for mosquitoes. I highly recommend the Repel 100 insect repellent pump spray, 98% DEET from REI, and a mosquito bug net to get you through this section. I'll throw some links to those down in the description for anyone interested in checking them out, as well as some other gear that really came in handy. As far as being up at Spade Lake, we didn't really have a mosquito problem. Alright, so the next quick tip, bring the 10 essentials, always. I'll throw a list on the screen from REI of the 10 essentials you should always bring while backpacking or hiking. And the last quick tip, guys, stop and take a look around. Put the phone down, put the camera down, just enjoy the view. This trip will provide some spectacular views that are just so worth taking in and enjoying. Alright, and that concludes my everything you'll need to know about Spade Lake video. I hope you guys all really enjoyed this one. Let me know if there's anything I missed, and also if you have some tips to share, leave a comment down in the comment section. Be sure to show this video some love by hitting that like button, and always be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.